From courtside of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast. This is episode 506. I am Andrew in our forum, Andrew NLSC on X. With me, my co-host Derek, DP3 in our forum, and DP3G and DP384 on X. Derek, I must emphasize to our listeners that we are not lawyers. However, we will be talking about a lawsuit today. But before we get into that, what else is on your mind this week?
Andrew, I think there needs to be a study completed based on the classic EA Sports slogan, EA Sports, it's in the game. Because there's a video on the NLSC YouTube which shows the famous EA Sports tagline on loop. And apparently many people think it sounds different from what it actually is.
Yeah, you see a lot of the comments on that video, I always thought it was EA Sports to the game or EA Sports this or that. A lot of people seem to be mishearing it over the years, and it surprises me because EA's slogan, their tagline, as you say, is very obvious. You know, it's in the game, or if it's in the game, it's in the game. That was the full slogan back in the day, back in the mid to late 90s. So I'm surprised that people mishear it.
I think it's clear. But the top comment on that video is, always thought they said to the game, so EA Sports to the game, and this got 165 likes. The other ones are EA Sports Sin the Game, He Sports. I believe this guy genuinely thought it said He Sports. EA Sports Sunny Game. Maybe didn't think it was that, but that's what he heard when he heard the slogan being said at the beginning of the game. EA Sports Senate Game, so that's what he heard. EA Sports Tinny Games, and then somebody said, I thought it said EA Sports Electronic Games. EA Sports Zimaframe with a question mark. Apparently that's what he heard. And EA Sports Cynic Game. So I don't know that the brain handles the EA Sports in the game slogan different depending on, who's hearing it.
Well, there is a phenomenon called mondegreens. Have you heard of those?
I have not.
So mondegreens are basically misheard lines or lyrics. It comes from an old poem, The Bonny Earl of Murray. And the verse reads as follows: Ye highlands and ye lowlands, where ha ye been? They have slain the Earl of Murray and Lady Mondegreen. Now, the line as remembered, Lady Mondegreen, is actually, and laid him on the green. But people remember this as Lady Mondegreen, so misheard lyrics have come to be known as mondegreens. And we do hear this phenomenon in other things, like this EA Sports tagline.
More poems by Andrew on future episodes of the NLSC podcast.
Literary criticism. Imagine that.
Yeah, I never heard of that before. But I'm curious if any of our listeners had heard it differently, maybe that when they were younger or throughout the years. Like I said, I always thought it was clear. EA Sports, it's in the game. It's also a great tagline. Oh, yeah, it was a great one to come up with back in the day. And mondegreens are very popular. I remember among wrestling fans back in the late 90s, Triple H's theme, My Time, it starts out with the singer saying, 1, 2, is this on? A mic check. But there were people that insisted in forums, in the internet wrestling community, that it was oneself, is this on? One's elf, is this on? And it's very clear. CDO audio was quite clear back in the day, and obviously we have even higher quality recordings now, but it was very clear on CD audio. And more to the point, it doesn't make sense. 1, 2, is this on? Is a mic check. One's self, one's elf, unless it was a hidden Christmas theme in Triple H's theme music. Yeah, it's funny how mondegreens come about. I'm curious, Andrew. So you talk about wrestling a lot, and I've seen you talk on wrestling on the NLSC Discord. Were you a wrestling fan before a NBA fan?
No, basketball fan first.
There you go. So when did wrestling come into the fray?
That would have been 1998, the explosion of the Attitude Era in then WWF, now WWE, of course. And yeah, Channel 10 here in Australia was my destination of choice back in 1998. You had The Last Dance going on in the NBA, you had the height of the Attitude Era, WWF, and also classic Simpsons, Golden Age Simpsons, all on Channel 10. That was my channel of choice.
And who's your favorite wrestler of all time, and who's your favorite Simpsons character of all time?
So, I mean, it's a boring answer, I guess, but I suppose Homer Simpson is, became the star of the show over the years. in the early days, obviously identified with Bart. He was he's the kid. I was a young boy. He's the young boy. He was the naughty kid that I wish I could be. I was the goody two shoes. I was I was very much Lisa, actually, but Bart was the naughty kid I wish I had the guts to be. But Homer did become my favorite over the years. All-time favorite wrestler is The Undertaker.
There you go. So it's never too late to be more like Bart. That's the way I'm just going to put that out there.
I mean, everybody online is a troll these days, right? So everybody is Bart Simpson on the internet.
Right, exactly. Except NBA 2K online is just a different type of toxic, right?
Yeah,
Bart couldn't even hang out online on NBA 2K.
Yeah, no, he was more witty in the early days as well, and you don't really get that wit in the online 2K scene.
So what do you think of the Zen situation? OG Billy Cook asked that I chime in on a post on X from Hank to Tank, who I definitely don't agree with everything that he says, but I think he's right on the money here. He says, gaming in 2023 is so incredibly down bad. We have cheaters with full-on aimbot and wall hacks winning and placing in tourneys in every big game, Fortnite, Call of Duty, Apex, and so much more. Even in 2K, we have people using Zens and Titans to shoot automatic green and 90% contested shots from half court consistently. These companies don't care to do anything to put a stop to it. It's sad. I wish they still cared about the player's gaming experience, but they don't. The sad thing is there is nothing we can do to avoid it. We just have to play the game and accept it. It's so sad. So before I throw this over to you, I want to let our listeners know, if they're not familiar, what a Zen is. So the Cronus Zen is a device that allows users to use macros and digitally modify their controllers on most platforms. So basically, Andrew, it's a modded controller. It can be used with the majority of controllers and potentially allow players to gain an unfair advantage. Once connected, players run scripts via their Cronus, which can range greatly, which is why they can do the automatic greens and whatnot and shoot a ridiculously high percentage that you could never do without cheating. And this is one of the responses under that post. A gentleman states, people care too much about winning, and it doesn't even make sense because what joy do you get out of winning while cheating? And I think it's a combination, Andrew. I think it's about winning, but also about clout, right? Attention and whatnot, and being able to show off on social media, etc. So what do you think about the Zen situation, about it not being completely combated, about, the videos we see online of people still using Zens, basically on a daily basis? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, this is the thing, is that people say, oh, you're just accusing other people of using a Zen. Oh, you need to get good. You need to master the controls as they have. But we do have proof that people are using these scripts, as you say, essentially modding their controllers to have this advantage. And it is sad. And I think that's a great point about caring so much about winning online records, the competitive online scene. There is irony there, obviously, because you're saying that the competitive scene is the place to be. Oh, you don't want to play offline, you don't want to play bots, do you? You're not a real gamer. But if you're having to cheat the game to to get that winning record, then you're not much of a gamer either. You're not much of a competitor. So I think it's absolutely disgusting that people are bringing this into the scene. It's making a toxic scene, a scene that's already so toxic, even more toxic somehow. And you do need to address this if you are 2K somehow. And they've done things like, removing the Rumble feedback that was the queue to release. They had that Rumble queue to release at the perfect time in previous games. They removed that, but that's only punished players who are trying to get good. It hasn't punished the cheaters. So that measure has been ineffective.
Yeah, to answer OJ Billy Cook's question about, basically what my thoughts are on Zens and how it impacts the state of gaming today, it's honestly just another online frustration, right? And I can stay away from that by continuing to play offline, and I don't have to worry about running into cheaters. And if I select the people that I play with, whether it be on the NLSC Discord or Andrew or my brothers, etc., I know that it's going to be a fair game. I do think that the Zen conversation, and it sounds like it's going on with other games, Andrew, as well, cheating for games like Call of Duty.
Oh, it's an epidemic.
Etc.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. It's a modded controller in general. It's not just for 2K. But between the toxicity that is online gaming, the atmosphere that has been created online that almost encourages that toxic behavior, the ways you're forced to connect online, like you stated, the beginner clothes, it makes you get bullied online because you're wearing those beginner clothes, etc. And now you could be really great at the game, right? And you could be a fair player, and you can just get completely washed and blown out by somebody who's using a modded controller. How do you combat this? I'm not 100% sure. I don't know exactly how the Zens work. I've been reading up on it a little bit, but it sounds like there is something that the company could do in order to prevent these Zens from working.
Well, from a technical standpoint, that could be difficult to address and shut that down. But I think a lot of the problems with the online scene come with the toxic atmosphere that the game itself, the design of the game, the approach to the online scene has cultivated. That the atmosphere that they've cultivated encourages this elitism, people wanting to have the winning record, wanting to score 50 points online in a 5-minute quarter game and just dominate the opponent and embarrass the opponent. Not just have a great competition, but guaranteed wins, guaranteed embarrassment. And of course you get in-game rewards, in-game perks, you get to have icons, logos, things like this, and rep that identifies you as an elite player, and people want that because it's dangling that in front of their face. You too can be an elite, and you can show off to people. And if you encourage that kind of atmosphere, if you cultivate that atmosphere, then people are going to want to cheat. It's going to make people more inclined to cheat to get that and to to get this online status symbol, because that is where we're at these days. And it is a shame, but it does start with not having any kind of matchmaking, not having any kind of way to ease people into the online scene. You say get good. People, as I said before, people need a way to get good. They need proper matchmaking. They need to be able to play people at their level and to level up. Every other online game does this. Rocket League does this really well. From my time playing Rocket League, I was quite impressed with that. So, yeah, 2K's online scene isn't anywhere near as good as it could and should be, and it comes down to the design, and it does encourage stuff like this.
Yeah, I also think it's incredibly concerning, the stories I'm hearing about people using these Zens in money tournaments, right? Tournaments where there's a payout and whatnot. And imagine if somebody could get by using a Zen, which it sounds like it's happening, but get by using a modded controller in one of, say, the My Team online challenges for
sure.
What is it, like hundreds of thousands of dollars?
Absolutely.
Sometimes for the prize.
The $250,000 is the official one, and that's to say nothing of people who are just putting money on themselves, which is also a problem with the online scene, the gambling.
Oh no, 100%. No, I mean, it's the online scene's all about gambling, really, right?
Yeah.
That's what it seems like. I mean, and we're going to be getting into that shortly with the next topic related to Take-Two being sued for, what they're doing with the gambling mechanics, with the microtransactions and whatnot. But yeah, that's why I stay away from the online scene. I mean, it's full of cheaters. It's full of toxic attitudes. It's full of bullying, all of that stuff. Why would I want to subject myself to that? Right? And it doesn't need to be that way, but that's just the audience it's cultivated at this point.
And that is the thing. It doesn't need to be this way. Obviously, it's going to be a competitive scene, but it's just so funny. People talk about the purity of competition, and we can't have AI players in Team Pro-Am, but we can have aimbots and Zen controllers, and we can also pay to upgrade quicker. So we want a pure competition where you can pay for an advantage, or pay to have an advantage quicker. It just doesn't make sense, although, as I've said in many articles, the arguments of elitists and shills aren't designed to make sense. They're only supposed to shut down legitimate criticism. But yeah, this is where the online scene is at. I'm glad to see people calling it out.
Andrew, there should be absolutely no way in the game to pay to upgrade your player. Period. The game should be fair by default. It shouldn't be a grind by default. It's a sports video game marketed as a sim. You should be able to, upgrade your player playing, games and maybe taking on challenges and whatnot.
And enjoy it.
Proving yourself. Yeah. And even enjoy it out of the gate. It's a video game. You should be enjoying it right out of the gate. You shouldn't be forced to use a super slow, crappy player.
It should be a fun journey. Of course,
Right. But of course, that's by design to make you spend money up front to upgrade your player. But like I said, that, there should be absolutely no system in place that requires you to spend money to get a higher overall. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it absolutely contributes to the toxic behavior, the toxic atmosphere that we are talking about. And we've talked about it on prior shows. And I've read out the dollar amounts. The people are putting a large amount of money into this game. Some people are putting in thousands of dollars in order to get an advantage on the game and in order to avoid the grind and whatnot. And I guess I just don't know how you can feel good about that when, you're basically paying to get all of these artificial boosts, and then you're going to go on social media and brag about it. They did that by design, right?
Oh, for
and
sure.
We talked about it before. They make more off of the, people spending money to get my team packs, people spending money to upgrade their player, to get, enough VC to get certain clothes so they look cool and so they can show off on social media and all of that stuff. They, like the articles state, Take-Two makes more money off of microtransactions by far than they do the game sales.
Exactly.
The game sales itself.
The current revenue is just been such a huge moneymaker for all publishers.
Yeah, it's the perfect storm of suck.
Yeah.
Like, the whole situation sucks, and it absolutely hurts gaming.
And I'm surprised that people defend it. I mean, I suppose I shouldn't be, because it is the internet, and there doesn't seem to be a position that people won't defend on the internet. But all it's optional stuff, which it technically is, but realistically, you're either going to pay or grind. And if people say, oh well, I have the money to skip the grind, it's not breaking the bank for me, I just put an extra $100 in, and that gets my player upgraded a bit quicker, and the game is palatable. Okay, but you're basically saying that the long way of doing it, the playing the game part of it to do that, is not fun. If a game is worth paying not to play, that says a lot about the design of the game, right? So I don't know why people...
Well, I've said it. Yeah, but I've said it in the past, though. I also have sympathy for the gamers. I even have sympathy for a lot of the gamers who are toxic, because they have been integrated over time into this scene, right? This is what they're made to believe has to happen on this game in order for them to get the attention that they want. It's how they believe they have to play. They believe they have to have these boosts and have this certain overall in this certain outfit in order to be competitive online, but also not get bullied online, right? And so they themselves can either be the bully or be able to stick their nose up at somebody, etc. It's such a weird scene, but I do sympathize a bit with the online basketball gaming community in general when it comes to NBA 2K.
Sure.
Because the game is made for them to act like this. Right?
It encourages it.
It's made
absolutely.
for that purpose.
Yeah.
It encourages it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I do share that sympathy for the gamer. We are being manipulated. Hands are being forced as far as paying for it. For me, it's more about the people that are really defending the grind and saying that it's necessary. You could have a very fun journey that's of a enjoyable length of that journey and still not have to grind so hard. And the other thing, of course, is, as you said, what satisfaction do you get from cheating to win? It's like the people that hack on PC and give themselves 10-foot arms and all the badges and all maxed out ratings, and they break the build system to play in the park online. And what satisfaction can you get? We saw someone in the forum who was playing the park online on PC, and was talking about all the hackers and cheaters, and said they gave it a go themselves just to see what it was all about, and said, this is boring. How can anybody actually enjoy this? They had more fun playing legitimately. And I absolutely agree. My
brother used to play a single-player game called Final Fantasy VIII. I know you've heard of it. And he would spend countless hours at the beginning of the game getting his characters, all three of them, up to 99 overall. That way, the rest of the game, he would be able to just cruise through it, right? That's kind of cheating the game, right? But who is he hurting doing that? Nobody. It's a single player game, right? So, we've used overpowering mods at times
Sure.
in order to beat down on the computer. We've used cheat codes in the past, in the 90s. Like there was one for Resident Evil 2 where I believe it was like a no damage mod, and I used it to get through the game because I didn't have enough time to play the game through it, with all the deaths and all and whatnot. So I used that cheat code to be able to progress through the game fast.
We all did.
And
I
still remember did stuff like that.
I still remember the Doom cheat codes. IDDQD for invincibility, IDKFA for all guns and ammo.
There you go. But who were you hurting?
Yeah, well,
nobody.
The Hellspawn that I was shooting, but apart from that,
that too, right? But and maybe when I did that on Resident Evil 2, did I feel a little bit guilty? Maybe a little bit, because I'm like, maybe I should have tried to progress through the game the way that you're intended to, right?
Sure.
Take damage. If you die, you dust yourself off somehow. Get back up like you can in video games, and you go at it again and try to complete the area, etc. But at the end of the day, we weren't hurting anybody. The difference is that these people who are cheating online, whether it be on PC or on consoles, using Zens or not, etc., they are ruining the experiences for their fellow gamer, because basketball is a team sport, and the modes that they're playing, the rec, park, etc., my team, connected online, etc., like there's 10 people on the floor sometimes, right? At minimum, there's a few humans that are on the sticks, even if they're surrounded by some AI players. So my thing is that I could never feel good about ruining somebody else's experience and cheating, whether they knew I was cheating or not, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
the problem is that there are a lot of gamers out there. I'm reading through the Reddit threads and seeing all the comments and stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of gamers out there that are cheating online and giving themselves an unfair advantage and screwing over their fellow gamer, and that doesn't sit right with me, and it is absolutely terrible for the gaming scene.
It is, and I've seen the arguments in favor of it, that I bought the game, I can play it how I want, and that doesn't really work in an online scene, especially where there are terms of service about the about how to use the game. They can definitely ban you for doing this, and understandably so, rightfully so. But that argument also falls apart because all the people that don't want cheating, they also bought the game. So if I bought the game justifies your stance, then their stance is just as justified as the cheaters. In fact, it is more so, because they are on the level and the cheaters are not. But yeah, I just don't see the satisfaction in doing that. It's like stealing money from the bank in Monopoly, or flipping the board when you're losing. Nobody likes a poor sport.
So yeah, to answer your question, OG Billy Cook, Andrew and I obviously think that Take-Two should take the necessary steps in order to block these Zens from being used. Like somehow make it so they don't work on NBA 2K, or they can be easily detected and that person could be immediately banned. I believe that there has to be some sort of detection system that can catch it. Some sort of programming that they can do that would allow them to be able to recognize when somebody is using a modded controller, and then basically kick that person out of the session, because cheating isn't good, period. And that person should not be allowed to use that modded controller. But yeah, the online scene is so big, and there's so many players, and there's so many people connecting all at once. I guess I can kind of see, where the challenge lies. And I'm sure that they don't want cheaters online. I'm sure that they don't want people using modded controllers and whatnot. But I'm sure there's a pretty big challenge there as well.
Oh, I'm certain. From a technical standpoint, hopefully there is something that can be done. I'm assuming there is. It's just difficult to implement. That is something that they need to keep working towards. But I also think they need to change the online culture and move away from this elitist attitude. The Reddit thread, I've posted it a couple of times in articles, talked about it on the podcast before, the former EVE Online producer who was talking about NBA 2K18 and talking about the MMOification of the game, said that they are cozying up towards the elite players, or the elitists, if nothing else, and they are moving in that direction that is pushing out the more casual player, the less elite player, the players who are.
No, that's because they're trying to trap the influence, though. I mean, that's really what it is. They're trying to get the highest follower and highest subscriber influencers from the gaming community.
Oh, they definitely are doing that, and that is part of the problem, that they are focusing on that, and it is ruining the online scene. So I think changing the culture is absolutely necessary to combat this problem as well. And you need to bring back those things like the Rumble feedback that gave people cues for releases, and say, "Oh, it's not good for the competitive scene." Well, neither is neither are modded controllers, neither is the elitism, neither is a lack of matchmaking. Any competitive scene worth its salt has that matchmaking. You need that to have people introduced to the scene and, again, face people at their own level, and then level up and face tougher competition as they get better at the game. So you need to design an online scene that is actually properly competitive, not elitist, not about making money. That's the other thing. You've also got the microtransactions wrapped up in all of this that undermine any kind of purity of competition and competitive spirit. So there's just so many moving parts with the online scene that is so antithetical to a proper competitive online scene that obviously you need to have some kind of technical solution in place, but you also need to change hearts and minds. That is tougher, but it's also necessary.
You know what a good start would be? Make your game less frustrating.
Sure.
Make the shooting less frustrating. Making sure your online player doesn't suck out of the gate, and make it, the game fun on the sticks when you first boot up the game. And make your shooting less complicated, less frustrating, less, unrealistic, and make the shooting fun again, like it was in so many past basketball video games. And it was good and fun. And a lot of past 2Ks, for example, NBA 2K17, we've talked about it before, had really, really good shooting mechanics, right? NBA 2K14 has good shooting, etc. Make the game just more fun from a feel perspective. And if you make the game more fun and you make it more fair to the gamer, less grindy, and make the on-court feel awesome, then you're going to have less cheaters, right? You're going to have people wanting to, they're going to want to play the game at face value, how it is out of the box, because the game is just so damn good that, it just speaks for itself. So I think that the best thing they can do, honestly, to combat the cheating is to make a better basketball video game on the sticks, and one that's more fair to the gamer.
I mean, that focus on profit over fun is just affecting gaming as a whole. I've seen some of the comments on the Mortal Kombat subreddit. They're talking about the lack of single-player content, and there's a lot of online players saying, well, this is a fighting game. It's about fighting other people. You're not playing it properly if you're playing against the CPU. These games are fighting games that are about fighting other gamers, and I've been playing Mortal Kombat since the 90s, Derek, and a big part of that, yes, two-player play, of course, but was playing through the tournament. And, can you actually beat Goro? Can you beat Shang Tsung at the end of the game? Can you finish the game when the CPU, as it was designed back then, is actually not playing fair? And same with NBA Jam, the original NBA Jam, coded to not always play fair. So overcoming the CPU, defeating all the NBA teams on the tournament ladder, just the same as defeating all of the fighters, the combatants on the Mortal Kombat tournament ladder, that was part of the gaming. Single-player gaming is legitimate. And, yeah, it's just ridiculous that more and more games are going towards that competitive scene to the point where a majority of the fan base is being ignored because, you're casuals. And, no, they're dedicated players. They're just not about the online scene.
There's a lot of gatekeeping out there.
Yeah.
A ton of gatekeeping about how you should play, how you shouldn't play. You shouldn't play single player because I don't like playing single player. Like, what is that supposed to mean, right? I hate gatekeeping, but I also hate cheating. So for cheaters, I am going to gatekeep you, right? Like,
yeah,
that's a little bit different. But, there's people that think that online play is peak gaming, right? Playing online. There's people that think that some games should only be online. You've seen those comments.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's been people that have said, you know what? Nobody cares about Play Now. Nobody cares about My League. Nobody cares about the all-time teams. Nobody cares about the classic players. You've heard all of that.
Yeah, nobody plays my career, nobody plays my team. Apparently nobody plays the game at all.
Right, but when somebody says something like that, you can always point to something to prove them wrong. For example, as far as, roster editing and, taking your teams into Play Now, into My League, there's hundreds of thousands of downloads, millions of downloads of custom rosters for every 2K release. What are they downloading those for, Andrew? To jump into My League,
not online play,
NBA,
no.
To jump into Play Now, right? Exactly. There are millions of people playing a style that you're gatekeeping. You know what I mean? So that's why it's absolutely ridiculous. That's why I applaud gamers who, basically support their fellow gamer in whatever they play. And that means, if somebody's jumping online and they're playing fair and they enjoy that scene and they're getting the most out of 2K that way, then I support them.
Absolutely.
And they should support me back, for my style of play, co-op with my brothers, fantasy drafts, classic team usage. I dabble in my team, etc. So I just think that's the way gaming should be looked at. Stop the gatekeeping.
No gatekeeping, no elitism, no cheating.
Exactly.
Before we go on, a reminder that the NLSC podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, nba-live.com, as well as our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. If you're listening on any of those apps, we'd greatly appreciate a review. To keep up with the show and everything we're doing with basketball gaming in general, connect with us on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. We also have an Instagram, NLSC Basketball, and on YouTube, we're youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. Once again, visit us at nba-live.com, where in addition to the podcast, you'll also find all of our original content, as well as our forum and modding community. So Derek, let's get to that lawsuit now, because Take-Two is being accused of theft in a new class action complaint over microtransactions in NBA 2K, and actually the rest of the company's popular sports games, which I guess includes WWE 2K, and the report comes from Axios.com by Stephen Totillo, and he notes that game publisher Take-Two Interactive is being accused of theft in a new class action complaint over microtransactions in NBA 2K. The suit was filed in federal court in California on November 17th by a minor, J.A., who is being represented by their mother, and it focuses on Take-Two's sale of virtual currency to buy in-game items in NBA 2K, and the inability to transfer that currency to newer versions of the game. The suit is alleging that Take-Two's approach is unfair, illegal, and greedy, and is also noting the deactivation of servers for the older annual sports games relatively rapidly after new editions are released. Because as we all know, once the servers are turned off, you can't use the online content, which includes VC, so if you've bought VC or simply been on the grind and have a bunch of VC, you can't transfer it to the new game. And the suit is accusing Take-Two of unfair business practices and violating California's civil theft statutes in shutting down the servers and basically alleging that it's stealing money, stealing that VC, stealing content that people have purchased. And this is interesting, Derek, because the deactivation of servers and not transferring VC from one game to the other is something that we've talked about before. It's always been a part of this conversation, but this is a new focus on it that is an interesting angle for a lawsuit, and also, obviously, criticism of the practice.
Can we just give a quick shout-out to Stephen Totillo, the author of that article?
Absolutely.
For Axios Gaming, because I love it when a journalist or, some member of the media actually tackles this stuff. When they actually go up against these big companies and call them out for unfair business practices. And so I want to give him a shout out real quick. So we saw this coming, right? I'm glad somebody wrote an article about it. I'm sure it's not the first time that somebody tried to take legal action against Take-Two or somebody or another company related to microtransactions. So it's definitely troubling that there is a large portion of the consumer base that spends extra money on microtransactions over the base price of the game. And the product, quote unquote product that they purchase whether it be, related to my team packs, whether it be related to getting virtual currency in order to upgrade their player, that all goes away when the servers shut down. So what they bought, the product that they purchased, is ripped away from them when the servers shut down. And we know that they've made it so that timeline is even shorter now. I think that it's 2 years, right?
27
so 2
months,
years.
Yeah,
27 months, and they shut the server down. So, for example, I believe it's this month where NBA 2K22 is getting its server shut down. So those people who spent all of that money on getting new packs for my team, getting their favorite players, all of that stuff, that is all being ripped away from them because my team is going to not be usable anymore in that game. And all the work they put into their player to be able to use them online or use them in that my career setting and whatnot, boom, gone, because my career will not be playable once the servers are shut down, which is different than some of the older NBA 2Ks where my career, stayed active. For example, NBA 2K14, right?
Exactly, yeah.
You're on season
offline
6.
Offline version of that, yeah.
Yep, there you go. So I think that they definitely have a case in court. I do believe that it is a form of theft. It sounds like the gambling mechanics in general are going to be brought up in this case. And that's excellent because it's absolutely targeting, Andrew. They are targeting consumers. They are also pressuring consumers based on, the way they made the game by default, grindy intentionally, frustrating intentionally, in order to force people to pony up, spend money on those microtransactions, right? And we've talked about the target audience for 2K. What is it for Take-Two Interactive? What's their target audience? Teenagers, right? Kids. So they're preying on, and I hate to use that word because it's loaded. It's intense.
Yeah.
Right. It is loaded and intense. But in reality, let's not cut corners here. They are preying on our youth.
Absolutely. These are predatory mechanics. We've said it before. Yeah.
Absolutely. And they're also preying on the parents of our youth, because if the child doesn't have the money, they may use their parents' credit card. Right.
Sure. And gambling addicts. A lot of adults that have impulse control, problems with impulse control.
Right, exactly. And there's a lot of them out there. So, like I stated earlier in this podcast, and I stated on prior shows, I've read off the dollar amounts that some people are spending on this game. And it's all ages, but mostly it's teenagers and young adults. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars on these microtransactions. Why? So they can enjoy the game, Andrew, right? Or get some sort of enjoyment out of the game. So I think that this is excellent that Stephen Totillo wrote this article. I think it's amazing that he's tackling this. And I salute the parties that filed the lawsuit because, is something like this going to smarten Take-Two up? Personally, I don't think so. I think that this is just going to continue, but at least maybe it can make them think a little bit, right?
For sure.
But yeah, it is super troubling for the reasons that I mentioned. And like I said, I think one of my biggest problems with this is that it targets our youth so much.
Definitely.
I think that might be my biggest problem with this.
And it is nice to see, and absolutely shout out to him for writing this article and covering it in this way, because in this age of access journalism and influencers and influencer programs where you have to play nice to get that access to the perks and news and everything else that you can have these exclusives to build an audience and further build your audience, it's great to see him not bowing to 2K and to actually bring up these issues and give coverage to this important issue. And what I find interesting about the focusing on, or to some extent, focusing on carrying VC over from year to year, absolutely an issue. Even if you can still do that, there's still going to be the problem with the grind, the loot box mechanics, the predatory mechanics, etc. But that does alleviate a lot of the pressure, or potentially relieves a lot of the pressure to spend if you can transfer that currency, whether you've earned it, whether you've bought it, from year to year. Obviously, now we have cross-generation VC wallets. For example, on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, if you have both versions of NBA 2K, the latest NBA 2K, or indeed anyone that still has the servers active, you can share that VC between the two versions of the game, across those two generations. But when the new game comes out, you obviously can't transfer it over. That is a big part of this lawsuit, obviously. And I think back to NBA 2K17, a game that I played a lot of online, had much fairer payouts. By the end of the year, all of us on NLSC Thrillho, we had a bunch of VC left over, and 2K18 is looming. We know we can't transfer it over, so we just went into my team. What are we going to do?
Well, think about that. Can I just point this out? You paid for that, and it's still in your game, right? The virtual currency.
Sure.
They have a case there. Like, how is that not transferable? It's the same company.
Yeah,
that makes the game.
Technically should be able to across your because it's tied to a digital platform, right? Either Steam.
That's what I'm saying.
PlayStation
like,
Network, Xbox Live. Yeah.
Right. Like that should be part of this conversation. And I'm guessing that it is based on the wording in that article, and what we know about the case if you spend $20, $30, $40, $50, $100, $200, etc. on VC, and that's still sitting in your wallet, and you're still playing the series of the same games made by the same company.
An annual release at that, yeah, as well.
And an annual release at that, it's absolutely theft if you can't bring that over to the new game. Because virtual currency, Andrew, is virtual currency, right? It's not like a licensed player, right? It's not like you're trying to carry a player over that was licensed in one game and not licensed in the other game. And it's like, no, you can't do that, right? Because there's policies against this. But they could never allow people to do the carryover of virtual currency, left over from the other game, because it would bite into their bottom line.
Well, that's the thing, yeah. And that's why they don't do it. And that's why, as we were wrapping up with 2K17, a lot of us in LC Thrillho, I think all of us probably had at least 50,000 to 200,000 VC just lying around. So we went into my team, we might as well just spend the balance, because this is going to be useless in a week when 2K18 comes out. We'd already maxed out our players at 95 overall, because 2K17 was one of the years that you had to play Park to raise your rep to get to 99 overall. That's a whole other issue. Not a fan of that system either, but that is a separate issue to this. At least you can play the game to get past that point. But
then in 2 years, that money that you just put into my team and those players, that's gone now.
Well, it is
because
gone,
my team server shut down. Right.
Well, see, I hadn't spent any of that money. That was all currency that I'd earned in game. But nevertheless, it was going to be useless once 2K18 came out. So we just went and spent it in my team. Actually got a few good cards from it. But again, we were going to be moving on to 2K18, or so we thought. So it was useless currency at that point, which is why we just had to spend it rather than lose it. And how useful it would have been. I mean, 2K18 has other problems, obviously, that did drive us away from the game eventually. But it would have been how useful it would have been when that game came out to transfer that currency over, get that head start, maybe enjoy the game a little bit more out of the gate, because you're not going back from a powerful player to an absolutely useless one. Not just from powerful to competent, but powerful to useless. That is the big problem with starting over year to year. But I am interested to see if it does end up qualifying as theft. I mean, to me, it seems that way, right? I mean, to you and I, it does seem that way, and we are not lawyers, as we said at the top of the show. But
we know what's right and wrong, and that's what I hate about fine print and lawyers and all of this stuff, is they're going to try to find some way to weasel around it and point to some sentence that can be construed one way or the other, right? It can be misinterpreted or whatever, and they say, well, we were leaning on this because this allows us to do what we're doing, and then the whole thing gets thrown out.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm definitely worried about that.
And to that point, there is fine print that says the servers will only be active until this date. We only guarantee 27 months of online support. It used to be 18 months, but then there was controversy over 2K14, PS4, and X1 getting shut down, and a very tone-deaf response at the time. The servers came back online. Some people's saves were unlocked. They were supposed to be, but others weren't. A very tone-deaf statement. All good things must come to an end. It's time to retire the saves and move on. And it's like, really, 2K, that's how you're going to handle it? That's your PR statement? Not surprising. They are the masters of passive-aggressive error messages in games. There is a problem with your connection to our server. There's a problem with your servers, mate. But to your point...
That's your favorite one. I've noticed that over the years. That's the one that you have a huge pet peeve about. There's a problem, with your connection.
It's so passive-aggressive. And there was one with the face scan that said, try again and pay close attention to the instructions. And first of all, there are no instructions in the scanning. First of all, I did it right, and it said that everything was done fine, and now you're saying there's an error when it's trying to upload to the game. So the problem is not with how I did it. The problem is, it's just so blaming the gamer. These passive-aggressive error messages. It is a huge pet peeve of mine. You're absolutely right, because I've seen so many of them, and it's like, this is how you're communicating with us? Does anybody there know how to talk to a fellow human being with any modicum of respect? But anyway,
well, go ahead and try to attack and blame a 14-year-old in court. I don't know how old the minor is that's involved.
Well, certainly under 18 at any rate. But
yeah, exactly, in this lawsuit. But just I'll say again, the targeting of youth, like our youth, of children, teens, etc. Go ahead and blame a teenager, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
go
gross,
ahead and do that. It's gross.
But you are right. They will point to that line that says, we do say that online support is only guaranteed for 27 months, that nothing will transfer over. That it's all there in the fine print, but it's still anti-consumer. So it seems. I mean, I think about my money in the bank. That is virtual currency, essentially. It's in there electronically. It's like, we've rolled over to a new year, Andrew. You've got zero balance in the bank now. That was virtual currency. It's gone. Imagine that in real life, especially because people do draw comparisons to the real economy with NBA 2K. Oh, it's inflation, bro. Remember when I did that article about the rising cost of my career, and people were trying to say, oh, it's just inflation? Inflation.
Oh, I saw those comments on Operation Sports too. Yeah. There was a huge thread on this, and there was many people in that thread backing 2K, backing the VC prices, talking about how they have to go up because it's a new game, bro.
It's inflation.
It's 2020. I think it was 2022, and it's like it's 2022. What do you expect?
Fairness to the consumer.
Basically, endorsing the practices.
Yeah.
So I also want to say that I believe there's a sizable difference between the microtransaction BS that 2K is pulling and downloadable DLC that you can purchase over and above the base price of a game, at least with my experience with DLC. And I do believe that oftentimes companies are unfair in that practice as well. Right? Encouraging people to spend $20, $30, $40, sometimes $50 over the base price of the game to get, different clothing in the game, armor, weapons, etc.
They could have been in the game by default as well.
Not a big... Right. Exactly. However, the majority of the time with downloadable content, with DLC, once you get it, once you pay for it, it becomes attached to your game and it stays there for the life of the game. That's been my experience with it. And I want to give an example too of how it's different. So I'm going to use tennis games as an example because I've seen this happen. So a tennis game is released with a roster of players, but during the game cycle, another popular player signs on to be in the game. Right? Somebody that people love. Let's use an example. I believe it was Rafael Nadal, a very popular player. And the game that I'm not going to say the game, but they charged, I want to say, either $4.99 or $5.99 to add Rafael Nadal to your game. So now you would have him in your player roster. That's for the life of the game, Andrew. Once you spend that $5.99 on Rafael Nadal, it puts him in the game and he is in your player roster for the life of the game. You can always use him, etc. So I think that's a really big difference, right? So no, I'm not a fan of DLC. I'm not a fan of how often companies use that avenue to add, to get people to spend more money with their company and on the game, etc. But I do think that there is a big difference between what Take-Two is doing with their microtransactions and DLC.
I mean, there's levels to it, right? WWE 2K offers premium editions and downloadable DLC packs and so forth with wrestlers who, look, you could very easily put them in the game. And back in the day, they would be in the game by default. You just have this big roster. Now they can make extra money with these special editions that have all the DLC packs and have the season passes, etc. And yes, that is a problem. But as you said, you do keep that content. Once you purchase it, it's there. It's on record for your account. You can always download it again, or if you're reinstalling the game. If you don't reinstall the game, if it's always there on the hard drive, it's there. So there is absolutely levels to this, differences in the fairness of how it's being approached. And when it comes to recurrent revenue mechanics, it is very seldom fair to the gamer. I'm looking at some other details here on this article, and it notes that Take-Two was sued over loot boxes in NBA 2K, loot boxes being the My Team packs, loot box mechanics there, sued by another minor and her guardian in Illinois last year. In October 2022, a judge ruled the matter should be settled through arbitration, leaving any resolution out of the public eye. So that is the problem.
That kills me. The resolution out of the public eye absolutely kills me, because what it is Take-Two has so much money, and these big companies have so much money that they can settle most any case and have the other party sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, and the facts of that case never
They're
hit
sealed.
the light.
They're sealed.
Right?
Absolutely, yeah.
They seal. It gets sealed. Nobody knows what the result was, if it was in favor of the minor or in favor of the plaintiff, etc. So, like, I absolutely hate the fact that they can seal that and seal, basically the details of the case from the public.
For sure. And on top of that, it also points to 2K probably being able to hit back at any accusations of theft or unfair business practices, which makes me not very confident of the chances of this particular lawsuit. With that being said, I'm not saying don't try. Obviously try this class action lawsuit and bring attention to this. And any kind of bad PR is, it may be a dent in the armor, but it is sort of that first blow, if you will. But I don't think it's going to go anywhere, because people have been fighting against microtransactions and loot box mechanics and gambling mechanics and everything for a few years now. We've talked about people defending those practices, certainly a lot of people speaking out on them. It is harder to get them from a legal standpoint, so it seems. Once again, I'm not a lawyer, but 2K has plenty of lawyers. Take-Two has plenty of lawyers of their own. They do have those terms written down in the fine print that do protect them at the end of the day, or they've worked out how to do this, as other companies have. It's not just Take-Two, obviously, but they are the company that we're talking about, because they are the ones producing a basketball video game. So it doesn't fill me with confidence, but with that being said, I'm still glad to see it going ahead. I'm still glad to see it getting attention.
Yeah, and I want to point something out. This isn't just Take-Two. Andrew, you know how I was using BlueStacks, the Android emulator? I was able to download NBA Live Mobile. I was able to play it on my 50-inch screen. Look, it's rough. It's a very rough game. It's not very fun. I want to let you know something, though. If you haven't downloaded it before, you want to talk about a microtransaction push. You want to talk about fun being hidden behind paywalls. You want to talk about the majority of the game being hidden behind paywalls in general. NBA Live Mobile takes the cake. It is so concerning. The most basic functionalities in the game are hidden behind a paywall. The game is constantly asking you to put more money into it. It is a constant microtransaction push in NBA Live Mobile. Listen, people, it's not just Take-Two.
I mean, EA is a huge offender.
EA Sports is a huge offender in this. And from what I know of Madden Ultimate Team, I guess people spend hundreds, even thousands of dollars on that, based on the needs of that mode, based on the gambling mechanics inside it, based on the pressure, etc. And so, listen, this isn't just Take-Two. EA Sports is doing it as well, and so are a lot of other companies. But none of them are innocent. All of them are guilty, and all of them deserve punishment for it.
Absolutely. I mean, you kind of want to see the dominoes fall with these lawsuits, but it is a long shot. And to the point of EA's greed, I mean, NBA Live on 8th generation didn't have microtransactions in its career mode in the 1 or Rising Star. They were in Ultimate Team. Not very pushy about it, but that does come down to Live not having the user base or the positive fan reception to really make it profitable. It was kind of a way to entice people to get that game. Oh, we're not doing the microtransactions as pushy as 2K or indeed our other games. We're not going to say that last bit out loud, but if NBA Live was better, if NBA Live was doing better, competing with 2K in terms of sales and reception, make no mistake, NBA Live would have microtransactions as pushy as 2K if it was in a position to be that greedy.
More than likely. Yeah. Right? I mean, we can't guarantee that because I don't believe that the whole world is evil, right? Like, I don't believe that everybody who jumps into the gaming industry is a putz, right? Like a money-grabbing, grubby putz. Like, I think that there are some good people out there, and I think that there are some good people that work at these companies. Unfortunately, though, a lot of the decision makers are only looking out for the bottom line.
The suits,
right?
Yeah.
A lot of the suits, a lot of the people up top only care how much money they make year over year and how they can increase that money flow. And that's the unfortunate reality of the situation.
And as far as loot box mechanics, it is probably going to come down to legislation. And look, I always have concerns about that because you don't want to see government overreach and all that stuff. But Australia does have very good consumer protection laws. Actually, it is, I believe, one of the reasons that Steam had to change their refund policy to comply with Australian consumer protection law. But at the same time, we like gambling ads. Gambling ads are everywhere in Australia, so I'm not very confident that they'll actually do anything about microtransactions and loot box mechanics from that legislation. And obviously, if it doesn't happen in the States either, where 2K is being made, the fact that they're banning it in Belgium, absolutely, hats off to Belgium for doing that. But it's not hurting their bottom line ultimately. And I think the Netherlands are doing it as well. So it's great to see those countries taking that stand, but it's a drop in the bucket at the end of the day if not everybody's on board with it.
Andrew, what's the most troubling gambling ad that you have seen in Australia? Can you pick one out?
I mean, just the sheer volume of them. Every sporting event, basically, every ad break, you'll see gambling ads. You'll see them pop up during the broadcast as well. And there's warnings everywhere, but there is a big gambling, not to get into a whole socio-political discussion here, but there is a big gambling problem in Australia, I believe. I mean, you go down to pubs, there are rows of poker machines, slot machines, as you would see in a casino. So we don't have a lot of regulation there. And again, you want the freedom, you don't want government overreach and all that stuff, but there's legislation against cigarettes and alcohol being advertised during certain events and being on uniforms. Back in the 80s, you would see cigarette companies sponsoring sports teams. That doesn't happen anymore. I think similar to situations that have been over there in the States as well, as far as the marketing of alcohol and tobacco. But yeah, it's just everywhere. Does
the DraftKings and FanDuel advertising bother you at all? I mean, it's pretty obvious. Yeah. It's pretty common.
It's ubiquitous at this point. Yeah,
it's everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it. I think it does promote gambling. Like I say, I'm not into gambling. There's been times when I've been at the pub with the guys, with the group, and have I put $5 through the poker machine? Sure, because I've budgeted for that. I'm like, okay, I'm going to put $5 through. That's my game for the evening. I'm not a gambler, but a lot of people are. I've seen people there all night in the gambling rooms, in the usually it's the smoking area as well, just putting hundreds of dollars through the machines. It is definitely a problem here in Australia, unfortunately. And to that point, for all our consumer protection laws, I don't think they're going to legislate against loot boxes.
There was a gentleman in front of me at our local gas station, and he bought, I want to say, 15 different scratch tickets, Andrew. And he scratched them while he was in the store. So he bought them and he started scratching them. And he cashed out the ones where he, won something, which normally it's just your money back, right?
Yeah.
Or half of your money back, and went ahead and bought more and scratched those. And that's an addiction. in my opinion, right?
It is, yeah.
That's a problem. If you're going into your local gas station and you're spending hundreds of dollars on scratch tickets, scratching them right in front of the counter, getting, disappointed, obviously not winning, and then going back buying more, and then, scratching those and just repeating that is an addiction, and that is troubling. And I do agree. I think there's a lot of people out there addicted to gambling, and I think that DraftKings, FanDuel, and everything else you mentioned basically is
packs?
just targeting my team packs, right? Is, targeting and feasting off of those people. And I have played FanDuel, but I know that I can control myself, right?
Exactly.
My brother and I played FanDuel for a while, and most of the time we did okay. Did we lose a few bucks? Sure. But it was in our budget, and we didn't put ourselves in a compromising position by doing so. But there are a lot of people mentally who cannot control themselves. And like I said, those avenues just, and those companies, et cetera, kind of just feast off of those people. And it is a shame.
As you said, preying on teenagers, on minors, preying on people with impulse control and gambling problems. And it is a shame because a lot of people who have those problems have tried to replace gambling with gaming, with video games, but now it's coming after them there as well. So it's, and you can say, oh, well, it's all on them at the end of the day, but trying to take advantage of someone's vices, that's low. That's low in my book.
Yeah, I mean, sports are huge, right?
Yeah. Sports
are huge, and no matter where you go, which platform you go to, whether it be Instagram, whether it be X, whether it be Facebook, YouTube, whether you're watching TV and you get hit with an ad, whether it be on like NBA TV or any other channel, etc., boom, it's promoting gambling. It's promoting the DraftKings. It's promoting FanDuel. It's promoting all these different avenues, make money fast, right? Schemes and whatnot. So like, I think that it is incredibly unfortunate, but it's very, very hard to avoid it. And everybody has a computer on them at all times accessing social media, right? It's
Absolutely,
the height of access. You put on your phone and boom, unintended, you get hit with an ad related to, some sort of gambling mechanic. And the next thing you know, you're broke. So that's the thing that's truly scary about it. But in relation to NBA 2K microtransactions and that article talking about Take-Two getting sued, I did ask the community their thoughts on the entire situation.
Yeah, so let's get to those responses now. Nate Starshow says, this is what you guys in the community talk about all the time. Glad someone is standing up to these virtual tyrants. And I think it is important that even if this lawsuit doesn't go anywhere, even if it does go to arbitration and get sealed, as unfortunate as that is, I'm still glad that people are trying.
Yeah, the effort is admirable. And I also want to point out that Nate and Roger, the Live 2001 legends, they're not playing online. They're not even playing the newest 2Ks and whatnot because they love their classics and that's what they enjoy playing. And they don't enjoy that online scene. So they kind of learn about it, I believe, through this podcast, right? And through articles like what Stephen Totillo wrote from Axios. And I'm glad that they still have their finger on the pulse in that way and that they still care about their fellow gamer, right? Him making that comment, even though he doesn't even touch the online scene and those gambling mechanics don't affect him personally, he still cares. And that's what we preach all the time on the NLSC podcast and on the NLSC in general, right?
Yeah.
Care about your fellow gamer. So good job by Nate.
That is a huge point because there's so many people that say, oh, well, I don't play my team, so it doesn't affect me. Okay, great. What about the people it does? Don't you think this is a problem? Don't you think they should do something about it?
Yeah, exactly. So like if you were in a grocery store and you saw somebody get pushed down, an innocent person who was just minding their own business, and, would you care what happened to that person, or would you just kind of like walk out?
Well, these days, most people would just film it and put it on Instagram for the.
Most people would film it and put it on Instagram, right? Exactly. But you still, you care about your fellow human being, you care about your fellow gamer, and you'll want to speak up. And if you're a good person, you'll want to speak up and help, or try to fix the situation somehow, etc.
No, absolutely. Community is important, and to that point, it is a class action lawsuit. And Stephen, the Live King, says if I had the money, I would have been sued. I would have sued them for unfair practices.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, are frustrated with it to the point where they wish they could do something.
Yeah,
right.
Because you do feel helpless,
and it's right, and it's not even just about having the money; it's about wishing you had a voice in general.
Yes.
Like there's a lot of people that, go on social media, whether it be Reddit, X, Facebook, YouTube, people have made YouTube videos about it. And they'll basically be screaming from the rooftops on those platforms stating, we got to do something about this. This microtransaction BS is theft, all of that. And, the games are made so unfairly, but it falls on deaf ears because the big influencers are not saying something, right? Those people that are speaking up, people like the Live King and whatnot, they don't have a big enough voice where they can make a difference. And I know that sounds terrible, but that's how they feel, right? And
that's how I feel, yelling into the wind sometimes.
Right, and that's how you feel. That's how I feel. And we feel like even if we have people agreeing with us, even if we get hundreds, sometimes thousands, like one of my threads did, of people responding in favor of my point and saying, hey, yeah, we got to do something about this, nothing changes.
There's no next step. Right? Yeah.
There's no next step. And then we feel like we're just kind of yelling into the void because nothing's ever going to be done about it.
We agree there's a problem.
I understand. I understand his frustration.
And Caleb at JRolling2003 says, yes, sir, finally. And hopefully we get back to the old 2K. And, I'm not confident we'll see that, but that would be the dream, right? That we could get back to what 2K used to be. This great simulation basketball game that was about the on-court product, that wasn't about the toxicity of the online scene, that wasn't about elitism and gatekeeping and certainly recurrent revenue.
I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And the only way it would ever happen is loot boxes / microtransactions being made illegal. That's the only thing that would change it, right? And I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. And I think that the problem is that the microtransaction BS is just more likely to get worse over time because the company sets out goals every year that they need to hit, revenue that needs to hit their bottom line. And if you think that year in and year out that the goal doesn't go up, you don't know business, right?
Exactly.
So
yeah.
The amount of money that they make this year on game sales and microtransactions, et cetera, that goal goes up. The suits make that goal go up. And so that means they have to put more predatory mechanics in the game, more stuff behind paywalls, make the game more grindy in order to hit that next goal. So I don't think we're going to see this go anywhere anytime soon. I think it's here to stay.
I mean, I'm very aware of the slippery slope fallacy, but as you say, we've seen proof of this attitude from the suits. We've seen the 2K's CEO, I believe, talking about disappointing revenue, and it was still in the billions, but it wasn't the same amount of billions as the year before. So that was quote unquote disappointing. So yeah, it's absolutely going to get worse.
They're disappointed. They're disappointed that they're not making an extra few bucks on their bottom line. Think about how disappointed they are in the games when they're being forced to spend all this money.
Exactly. Yeah.
On top of the base price of the game. It's ridiculous. When I hear comments from a suit like that, it makes my blood boil. It makes me angry, to be completely honest with you.
And one more response from X before we head over to the NLSC Discord. 2K Mac says definitely theft. And look, from a moral standpoint, I absolutely agree. The sticking point as far as the lawsuit is concerned is whether the weasel words, whether the fine print, whether that counts as theft. And that is obviously the wiggle room that all of these companies have.
Regardless, based on the facts at hand, I consider it a form of theft.
Agreed.
So I would agree. And
jumping over to the NLSC Discord, Pep shares the a gif of Mr. Burns from The Simpsons, tenting his fingers and saying, "Excellent." NBA Live Dude says, "This is great." Avery says, 10 years ago, I never could have thought this would happen. It just shows the greed in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is it's industry-wide, right? The greed isn't, like we stated before, it's not just Take-Two, it's EA Sports, and a bunch of companies, people that are making RPGs, MMORPGs, action games. We talked about there were microtransactions in Mortal Kombat, right? The new one that was released, and a lot of stuff hidden behind paywalls.
They're really bad
so this is,
in MK1, yeah.
Yeah, the microtransactions, it's industry wide. Some companies worse than the next, but all equally guilty, in my opinion. So I do love that there is pushback, not just from the people who started the lawsuit, but also in the NLSC community. It is nice to see the reactions on the Discord and to my posed question on X. So, do I think that anything's going to be done about it anytime soon? No. And to be completely honest with you, I think that this case is going to get settled and it's going to be just shoved under the rug, and we're not even going to know what happened, right?
Yeah.
We're not even going to know the resolution, and things are just going to continue as they were. And it's a damn shame.
Well, to that point, I just noticed a couple more responses in the Discord. Juicy Shackmate says, I truly hope we get a good result from the lawsuit so that finally Take-Two is held accountable for their unfair practices. And unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen. Ken says, VC carrying over to the next game seems like the bare minimum of what should come from this. As someone who primarily plays my team, the most egregious thing is how you can buy a theme pack and not get a card from that theme. It's quite literally false advertising on packaging. Then you have to pay extra VC just to guarantee that you get one of the cards that's advertised on the pack. And yeah, that's a big one with the loot boxes, is that you don't even get the theme. It's not even as far as getting a top card, but even an appropriately themed card from these packs that are premium prices.
They should be sued based on their pack odds in general.
Yeah.
The fact that the odds are made piss poor on purpose in order to make you spend more and more money. And that's just a fact. There's a reason why I want to say it was NBA 2K23, you pulled 7, 8, 9 different Kazi Russells from packs, right? Why you kept getting that same player over and over and over again, and you didn't get any of the players you want. That is by design. That is programmed, my friends, into the game in order to force you to say, you know what, let's try again, right?
It's like the guy buying scratch lotto tickets.
It's the exact same. It's the same exact thing. Exactly. And that's the problem. And the thing is even if you get your favorite player, let's say you coveted a certain, Dwayne Wade, and you love using him, and you love using him against the CPU in those modes. You don't even care about playing in the My Team Online connected experience. You just want to play him and use him in domination. Well, that money that you spent to get Wade, that is all for naught, because in 27 months you can never use him again.
Yeah.
In my team. So that's the thing. Yeah, it's terrible.
And finally, a tongue-in-cheek comment from Maz here. She says, we've been complaining about microtransactions for years. Turns out all we have to do was tell our parents. Yeah. But I am glad that parents are actually stepping in, on a serious note, that they are stepping in and taking this matter seriously, and that it is getting people's attention. And I think that's the big... Whether it takes down these practices, whether it stops these practices, we don't want to see Take-Two get taken down. We still want the games to come out, but we want them to be fair to the consumers, obviously. I mean, I can only speak for myself. I don't want to see them go anywhere. I just want to see them treat the customers better. But yeah, it is important to raise awareness of this so that people can at least look out for themselves, and that parents can look out for their kids. These practices may still be there, but at least you're aware of them and can possibly avoid them.
There are plenty of eyes on this stuff. There's not a issue of having enough eyes on the issue. There's not enough voices, and there's not enough action.
True. Related
to the issue, and there's not enough high follower influencers, people who can make a difference with an article, so somebody from a big publication speaking out properly about this. And like I stated, I'll just repeat it, not enough people in general taking action against it. So yeah, plenty of eyes on it, Andrew. The eyes are on it. Everybody sees what's happening, but no action is being taken, really.
Apart from the lawsuit, of course, I suppose, but we will see what happens. As you say, it's very likely that it will end up in arbitration, sealed, dismissed, whatever. But I am glad that people are giving it a go, that people are trying to make a difference, and clearly the community feels as we do. And before we wrap up here, thanks to everybody who responded to Derek's question this week and tunes into the show each and every week, obviously. And there were people, Derek, that were letting us know that we were on their Spotify Wrapped. People tuning into the podcast and really spending a lot of time listening to the show on Spotify, and we really appreciate that. It's very humbling to see that we're part of your Wrapped, and thank you for all the support throughout the year, and keep tuning in.
That made my day.
Yeah,
3,000 minutes, 4,000 minutes listening to you and I. Like, how could they? Aren't your ears bleeding? Like, I can't even believe that you could listen to Andrew and I for that long. But the fact that, we have a podcast that's one of your favorites that you tune into every single week, and you're enjoying the content, that is what it is all about, and we really appreciate you.
According to one of the charts that I follow, we actually hit number 30 on the Australian charts for video games the other week, so that was pretty cool.
Wow, that is wild.
Yeah.
I mean,
US is a bit harder to break into. US is a bit bigger.
Yeah, I wasn't going to ask that. Yeah, that was the next piece. I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to bring up, where we rank in the US, because that's definitely a completely different story. But no, that's definitely something to be proud about.
So thank you for all of that support, for tuning in each and every week. We really do appreciate you. And we're going to keep bringing you this NLSC podcast each and every week. And of course, Derek, speaking our minds and trying to represent our fellow gamers.
Yeah, you can always count on Andrew and I being honest on this show. And, I think the biggest thing that we want you to take away from episodes like this is the fact that we give a crap.
Yeah, we're for the gamers, yeah.
And we care about our fellow gamers, and we want you to be treated fairly, whether we know you or not. And we want these companies to operate based on fair practices. And unfortunately, with Take-Two, even with EA and other companies out there, they are not operating in favor of the gamer. In fact, what they're operating in favor of is how much money can hit their bottom line at all costs, right? So, just know that Andrew and I do care. We want what's best for you.
This would probably be a terrible time to launch the NLSC NFT. NLSC 8 is going to have to go back on the shelf, unfortunately. But with that
listen, people, if Andrew doesn't start charging for you listening to this podcast, he's going to have to continue his OnlyFans with his feet pics.
We talked about shoes last week. The shoes are off. But yes. With that being said, that has brought us to the end of this week's show. As always, we thank you for tuning in and invite you to join us again next week and every week, either on the NLSC, nb-live.com, our YouTube channel, or your podcast app of choice, including Spotify. In the meantime, please connect with us on social media. That's where you can get in touch with us, and of course, stay up to date with all of our content. So Derek, go ahead and plug the handles.
Yeah, you can find me on X at D43G and at D4384. I'm also on the NLSC D43 and on YouTube D43.
I am Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on X. The NLSC is on X and Facebook at the NLSC. We're also NLSC Basketball on Instagram and Threads. We're on YouTube at youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep it locked to the NLSC itself, nb-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. So, thank you once again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.